Here's a story problem, and you need to read it. A lot of the times you need to read it 2, 3, 4, 5 times in order to make all the details make sense and make everything jump out at you. Some people aren't willing to do that. Some people will just say, I can't do story problems. I think a good place to start is at the very end. So read through this. I'm not going to read it to you. But when we get to the end, I see maximize the farmer's revenue. So I think the key part here is being able to set it up, and I like starting at the end. I know that I'm maximizing revenue, so I'll put maximize R equals. If you go through and read it again, look for numbers that are talking about revenue. And so I see we're talking about revenue here and here. So I know those numbers are all going to go in that revenue equation. If you examine that sentence closely, it's talking about crop A and crop B. And so I'm going to define variables, X to be crop A and Y to be crop B. And so I have a sentence, R equals 155X plus 220Y. But more than that, every time I see crop A, I'm going to write an X, and every time I see crop B, I'm going to have a Y. And so that's going to help me with my setup for the rest of the problem. You go through and reread this, so this is like the third time I'm reading this, but I go through and reread this, and everywhere I see crop A, I'm going to put an X. So here's crop A, I'm going to put 1X here, and this is going to be a 4X here. Here's crop B, so that's going to be 100Y, and this one's going to be 50Y, because we're talking about crop B. And then the only other numbers are right here, 160,000 and 2,800. But what you should notice, in addition to X and Y, is these categories. They're splitting the numbers into categories, and it looks like they're talking about person days of labor and capital. And so now that I've got X's and Y's in, I should be able to kind of filter my numbers into those two categories. If you go back and reread it again, this 1X up here is talking about person days of labor. So our constraints, subject to, I'm going to write an inequality for person days of labor. I'll have 1X, of course you don't need that one, but it doesn't really matter, for person days of labor. And I've got 100Y is talking about person days of labor. Whoops. And then I keep reading, and it's down here, 2,800 person days of labor. That's my limit, so I know it's going to be less than or equal to 2,800. I'm talking about person days of labor there. The other inequality is going to be talking about capital. So we go back through, and we're like, okay, well, there's 4X for capital, and there is going to be 50Y for capital, and that's going to be less than or equal to 160,000 for capital. And then, as always with these kind of story problems, we need to make sure and restrict the numbers so that there are no negative numbers. We're not going to have negative 40 acres of crop A. We're not going to have negative 52 acres of crop B, anything like that. So there is your setup. If you wanted to solve this, you could either, since it doesn't indicate how you have to solve it, you could either use the method of corners or the simplex method. Just would be your choice at this point. I'll leave that up to you.